The time is here tomorrow. We kick off games at the Unidome. I'm super excited. I'm sure you guys are super excited. You're going to see me there every single game. I'll be there with my camera. But today, we are bringing you guys our rankers picks. Now, again, these are not my picks, so don't be, oh, Cade, you didn't pick my team. No, these are our rankers picks. I'm simply delivering them to you. You can give me crap. I don't care. Nevertheless, I'm excited to meet everybody. I'll have IA football stickers there. Come by, say what's up, say, hey, Cade, I'll throw you guys a sticker. Tons of football. I'm super excited. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else over these next few days. IA football is going to have coverage. We're going to be dropping highlights when we can, scores, stats, updates, anything and everything. I'm going to be there. We're going to have a team. We're going to be working to bring you guys the most content that we can. But again, today we are bringing you guys our rankers picks these semifinal games. I'll be breaking them down, giving you a little preview, what to expect, who to look out for. You saw we posted today our 5 players to look out for. Believe me, there is a lot more than 5 players in each class to look out for. We just had to shrink it down to a list. A lot of good players did not make it on the list, so I promise if you didn't, I'm sorry. It's just how it is sometimes, and I know there's tons of other guys. I'm going to try and bring up as many names as possible throughout this video so that you guys as fans who might not know a lot about other classes can know about these guys. So all classes are going to be combined into this one video. We're going to kind of take it as the tournament will go. So we'll start with 8-man, then we'll go A, 4A. I'll kind of walk you guys through it so you guys know what to expect. Again, if you're a 4A fan, just I recommend just watching this whole video. There's just tons of good action, tons of huge matchups, tons of big names. And I promise if you plan on buying the stream pass, this is going to be a huge help for you to kind of know what to look out for, because although I haven't seen all these teams in person, our rankers have. Nick has. He's gone and shot a few of these teams. So we're starting to grow our knowledge in football year one. So you guys have done a great job of bearing with us, and I'm glad you guys are here and listening to me right now. That shows a lot. But without further ado, that's enough from me. Let's get into these graphics. It's dome time. This is the final 4. There's nothing else to say. I've kind of done this update on where we're at, and this is the end. If you've made it here, huge congratulations to you and your team. This is a huge accomplishment, and again, we're super excited to cover you. Starting on Thursday. Now this is, Wednesday. This will be tomorrow. If you're watching this, we'll probably post this Tuesday afternoon. Wednesday, we are starting the day off with the number 1 team, Winfield Mount Union, versus the number 14 team in our IA football rankings, Bishop Garrigan. Now, if you guys remember a few weeks back when we asked that buy or sell question, will a double-digit seed make it to the Dome? We had like 5 or 6 of them. I remember I personally bought that because I had a few in mind. But yeah, a few double-digit seeds made it, Bishop Garrigan being one of them. Some big names you got to know out for. I got a piece of paper with all the names across 7 classes. There's a ton of stuff to know. Caden Rothler, he's the running back for Bishop Garrigan. He's got 1,000-yard rushing. Tate Forsch is the sophomore quarterback for Bishop Garrigan. He's got 1,200 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, and just 1 interception. Now, Winfield Mount Union, you're going to know a little bit more about them because they are the number 1 team. Jake Edwards at the helm, 1,400 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 3 picks. Big name, Cam Buffington. He's got 1,300 rushing yards with 23 touchdowns. He's also got 500 receiving yards with 11 touchdowns, and he's got 94 total tackles. That is your Iowa commit there in Class 8-man. He's kind of the big name, but he's also got names like Cole Milks around him. They have really, really incredible playmakers, and that's why they're here. It's not all because of Cam Buffington. He is a big part, but he's got a great team around him, and you're going to see that on display tomorrow. So getting into our rankers picks here and their kind of reasoning. The biggest question mark coming into this game is how many snaps Cam Buffington will be available for. An injury towards the end of Winfield's second-round game limited him to mostly playing defense in their quarterfinal game before re-aggravating the injury late in the game. Garrigan's Cinderella story brings them to the Dome and a date with the number 1 Winfield Mount Union team to kick off the 2023 semifinal round. This is a team that dropped a Week 1 game to Fort Dodge St. Edmund and has not looked back since. It would be foolish to look no further than say these 2 undefeated teams will roll the 2 one-loss teams in this round. But both teams will fling it around a little bit through the air as they'll rely on one featured back on the ground when healthy. Although Garrigan has been a bit of an underdog, they have been able to ride home field advantage through these playoffs, with Remsen and Cam having to come to their place due to the alphabetical tiebreaker the last 2 weeks. Number 1, Winfield Mount Union had to go on the road last week to get it done. Will Garrigan be able to keep the Cinderella run going now that they have to go on the road? Our ranker is going with the number 1 team in Winfield Mount Union. Again, a big question mark with Buffington and his injury. I saw he had a huge game. He had a ton of tackles on defense. I don't remember how many, but he made a huge impact. And like I said, it's not just Cam Buffington why they're here right now. Jake Edwards, Cole Milks, they have a ton of guys on that team that are making plays. I've had a ton of fun keeping track of them in the stat book, and I'm really excited to see them in person. So our ranker is going with Winfield Mount Union to kind of stop the Cinderella run that Bishop Garrigan has been on, a really impressive one at that. Heading into our second game, this one will kick off tomorrow at around 1 p.m. These are our only two games tomorrow. Gladbrook-Rhinebeck and Bedford. Now, Gladbrook-Rhinebeck, their star, their quarterback, Isaac Clark, 1,700 passing yards, 29 touchdowns to 1 interception. He's also got 680 rushing yards and 16 touchdowns, so he's really a do-it-all man for them. And they've also got Hudson Clark, their one of their top receivers, that is. He's got around 1,600 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. Now, Bedford, they're going to want to keep this ball on the ground. They're going to run the football. Garrison Motzinger, your guy to watch out for, 1,100 rushing yards, 22 touchdowns, and he's averaging 11.4 yards per carry. That is that's astounding towards the end of this year, and however many games in, we're 11, 12 games in for these teams. And then Silas Walston, their other running back, 700 rushing yards and 16 touchdowns. He's really their complimentary back. Getting into our rankers reasoning, though, Bedford came into the postseason as our lowest-ranked undefeated team, while Gladbrook-Rhinebeck was the highest-ranked one-loss team. The Rebels have been on a tear this postseason, having to go through 3 teams that all or were ranked at one point this season. The closest matchup of those 3 was last week, where they reversed their lone loss on the season in a game where they were able to control it throughout against Clarksville. Bedford also faced 3 teams that either are or were ranked at one point in time. However, the Bulldogs trailed for a portion of their quarterfinal game against rival Lennox. It was actually the second straight week where they trailed in a playoff game, falling behind Exira Elkhorn Kibbleton 14-0 in the first. We know the Bulldogs are battle-tested and don't panic when they fall behind. This will be a tale of 2 different offenses in this game, like I just talked about. Bedford will ride Motzinger on the ground, who almost has 200 yards in each of their last 3 playoff games. Gladbrook-Rhinebeck will look to get it done more through the air, with Isaac Clark having over 3 times as many passing yards on the season as Bedford's quarterback Connor Nally. This should be an excellent East versus West battle. Now, our ranker in this one is going with the former number 1 team, the team that was basically almost wire to wire until they suffered their first loss, Gladbrook-Rhinebeck. So this would set up a Gladbrook-Rhinebeck Winfield Mount Union state title matchup. That would go down next Thursday, I believe. So that is how our 8-man ranker has the semifinals shaping up. Moving on to Class A. Now this will be Thursday morning, if I have that right. And we will start our day off with Madrid and West Hancock. This is the number 1 Madrid team versus the number 3 West Hancock team in your IA football rankings. 2 teams with fairly similar play styles in this one. Both teams want the ball on the ground. The teams have a combined 21 passing touchdowns, but 94 on the ground. So a lot more rushing touchdowns for both these teams. They're not afraid to put their defense on the field. And we'll start with Madrid, where they snuck by ACG last week in a battle of undefeated teams. They got a touchdown late in the 4th to secure that victory. And only 2 Tigers registered a carry in the game. Wicker had 29 attempts for 133, and their other star, Nash Ramirez, had 15 for 52. Nash Ramirez is kind of a do-it-all guy, one guy that kind of falls under the radar. I'm excited to watch him. He's their star on defense, and he's also kind of their lead running back behind Wicker, the quarterback. The Tigers' defense, though, has just continued its dominance, not allowing more than 14 points over the last 5 weeks, and Nash Ramirez is a huge reason for that. West Hancock, on the other hand, continues their absolute tear, dismantling a Wapsie Valley defense that had been nearly spotless all year long. Mitchell Smith, the quarterback, the number 15, he only completed 1 pass in the win, as the Eagles combined for 52 attempts for 319 on the ground. That was led by Cale Zuhl's 31 attempts for 183 yards. He was a workhorse in that one. West Hancock has scored 38 or more points in all but 1 game so far this season. That was their 1 loss to St. Ansgar. And I'll be ready for the ball to stay on the ground in this one. These 2 teams will be looking to control the line of scrimmage and hit those few explosive plays on end arounds, trick plays, play actions. They really don't throw the ball that much unless they absolutely have to or they want to catch you off guard. So it's going to be crucial for these defenses to kind of stay in their assignments and don't lose their assignments, because that one play where they get you, it could be costly. Turnovers will also be crucial in this one, and I think whoever wins the turnover battle wins this one outright, is what our ranker has. He goes, I love Madrid. They've been our number 1 team for 2 months in a row, basically, but Wes Hancock is just impossible to pick against in this spot. He's got Wes Hancock 28-20. He even got you guys a final score. Winning that one and going off to the state championship yet again would be the Eagles if our ranker is correct. Moving on to our second semifinal game in Class A, Woodbury Central 11-0 versus number 11 East Buck at 9-2, another double-digit team, as you can see, making it into the semifinals. East Buck is kind of the shocker. They got into the Final Four, while Woodbury Central was expected to be here. Compared to our other semifinal, these two teams play completely different styles of football. While the Buccaneers will keep it on the ground, the Wildcats want to air this thing out. I've talked about it before. They want to air this thing out, and it makes total sense with the weapons they have. They snuck past MMCRU, but last week they dominated a team they've already beaten in Logan Magnolia, 35-0. Again, the second victory over Loma this year for the Wildcats. And look for the big three on the offense here: Clunder, Zach Butler, and Eric McGill. I've talked about them. I don't need to talk about them anymore. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver. You got to keep an eye out for those guys, because they're going to be the ones with the ball in their hands most of the time. While 5 players have 100-plus receiving yards for the Wildcats, only one man for the Bucs can say that, mainly because of their two-headed monster in the backfield gets the majority of the workload with Tanner Thurn and Hunter Bowers. The two have 2,300 combined rushing yards and 38 touchdowns, and Thurn on defense has 93 tackles, which is also good for second in Class A. I think he needs like 12.5 to take over that top spot, so we'll see if he can do that. This one is another one that's hard to pick, our ranker says. He's backed the Cats twice now and gone against the Buccaneers twice in a row. So he's 2-0 picking the Wildcats, 0-2 picking against East Buck. But at the end of the day, it's going to be East Buck's run game that's so huge in this. If they can get the ball in their hands and keep Clunder off the field, this one could be really, really a good game. But the trouble is, if Woodbury Central gets out to a few scores early, it's going to be really hard for East Buck to crawl back into this with a run-first offense. And our ranker is going with Woodbury Central. There's just too many weapons, too many star players around. He's got this one as a 42-21 Woodbury Central victory. Moving on to Class 4A. This will be your nightcap on Thursday. 4A is always a ton of fun. They bring a ton of fans. As I pull up the 4A, our rankers picks right here. And we're going to kick this thing off with Lewis Central and North Polk. Lewis Central picking up a win last week to qualify for the Unidome, and North Polk picking up a nice home win against Xavier. Got some names for you here for Lewis Central. We'll start with them. Brady Hetzel, the quarterback. He's the star. 21 touchdowns, 9 picks, 2,000 yards passing. He's going to look for Curtis Whitty and Luol Maker. Whitty has 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. Luol Maker, 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Owen Thomas, number 8 on defense, he's kind of the voice on that front. 56 tackles, 10 of those for a loss. And now talking about North Polk, a team we honestly really have not talked a ton about here at IF Football, and they've just continued winning, and now they find themselves here in the semifinals. So I'm going to catch you guys up on who to look out for North Polk. Isaac Zosky, who I believe, if I remember correctly from IA Baseball, is their catcher. I want to say that's correctly. Isaac Zosky, the quarterback, 1,200 yards passing, 15 touchdowns, 3 picks. BJ Tate is their running back, 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns. And on defense, they have 2 guys with 75-plus tackles. Braden Foster with 91 tackles and Kohan Torres with 76. And this North Polk defense forced 27 team turnovers so far this season through 11 games, which is very, very impressive. Getting into what our ranker has to say now, another matchup that, as far as bound will go back, has never happened up until this year. I'm not sure that these teams have even been in the same class in football, says our ranker. North Polk has found ways to win recently. They just beat Xavier and Ballard, both by a score of 17-14. They've been led by DJ Tate, like we talked about. And Lewis Central, on the other hand, they started 2-2, but have gone 7-0 since. This will be Lewis Central's 5th game in the Dome in the last 3 years. Look for Lewis Central's experience in the Dome to be the difference in this one. Like we talked about, they're led by Brady Hetzel, who's got 2,000 passing yards now this season. Get him in the Dome where the elements are controlled, and he could have a big day. Our ranker sees Lewis Central advancing to the state championship. He's got 24-17 as an exact score, if you want to keep track of that in this one. Now, moving to the nightcap, which is honestly the one I'm really excited for. This is number 5 Bondurant Farrar against number 1 Western Dubuque. Now, Two interesting stories here. Bondurant Farrar faced a ton of injuries in the last few weeks like we talked about. They're led by quarterback Jordan Ryle, 1,600 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 5 picks. And the man that you got to keep an eye on, you might not really see him when you look at Bound, but that's just because he's really come on as of late, is running back Caleb Moore. He wears number 2, 1,200 yards rushing to this point in the season, 13 touchdowns. But really, it's been the last 3 weeks that's gotten him all those yards. The last 3 weeks, he's gone 213 yards rushing, 309 yards rushing, and 242 yards rushing. Now, I'm just doing the math. That's about 750 yards in the last 3 games. So he's acquired almost all of his yards in the last 3 games, which is crazy. He's taken over the workhorse back with Titus Cram going down, which is, a sad story in itself. But nevertheless, they've gone next man up. Caleb Moore is that next man up, and he's stepped up in a huge way. I'm excited to watch him. I haven't seen Bondurant Ferrari yet this year. I've been wanting to. Just didn't happen. They're right in my area, and I haven't gotten to see them, so I'm super excited for them. But they're getting a date with Western Dubuque, who's kind of put a stranglehold on that number 1 team in Class 4A. They've got a really, really versatile offense. Tanner Anderson at quarterback, 1,400 passing yards, 19 touchdowns, 4 picks. But the star here is another running back, really a huge running back show in this Class 4A nightcap. Grant Gloucester, your leading rusher in Class 4A. He's got over 2,400 yards rushing, 28 touchdowns. He's really the big name here. I did see that Brock Carpenter, he has 3 punt return touchdowns so far this season, so that could be something in itself. But getting into what our rankings say here, as far as the bound goes back, another matchup where these two teams have never played each other. Bondurant Ferrari, the team that lost their 2 best players and found a new identity in Week 9, has played really well ever since. And compared to Western Dubuque, the team that has really been the favorite all season long, taking over the top spot since Week 5. Western Dubuque has only allowed 9 points in the playoffs so far. This is going to be a really physical game. You could see it being low scoring. He says, look for Grant Gloucester to be the difference maker, 2,400 rushing yards. He currently sits 33rd for most rushing yards in a season and is looking to climb that list. He's got Western Dubuque 28-14 in this one. The number 1 team would be squaring off with the number 2 team in the state championship if these matchups were to go as planned. Moving on to Class 1A, this would be Friday morning, and we'd be starting off with Grundy Center and Columbus Catholic. Now, another double-digit seed making the Dome in Columbus Catholic, and people might see this game as a kind of a David versus Goliath type of game. You got number 2 versus number 14, kind of the Cinderella in Columbus Catholic. But let me remind you, these 2 teams played on a Thursday way back in Week 5. I believe it was a Thursday anyway. A game that ended the 4th quarter with just a 7-0 Grundy lead. The Spartans ended up winning 21-14, and this was the last time the Sailors have seen a loss way back in Week 5. And talking about the Sailors, the team is well represented in the Class 1A statistical rankings. How about the 4th leading receiver in Nick Merrifield, the 4th leading passer in Carter Lockhart, and the leading rusher in Parker Kjelsen. This team is as versatile as any, and they're coming off back-to-back ranked playoff wins against good South Hamilton and Sumner Fredericksburg teams. Since their last loss in Week 5, the Sailors have outscored opponents by an average of 37-10. So they're getting hot at just the right time. Again, number 14 and 9-2 Columbus Catholic. Now, Grundy Center, while the offensive numbers may not stack up statistically, Grundy Center's just that team that just wins. And they're coming off a state championship, and they've got their same quarterback under center in Colin Gordon. Gordon will also lead the rushing attack with Justin Knack and Brody Zinkula. The end zone threat for the Spartans is Tiernan Vokes, who's caught 11 of Gordon's 22 touchdown passes. Now, the story for Grundy Center, though, is their defense, who's allowed an astonishing 7 points per game this season. Look for this rematch to look a lot like the original, a low-scoring battle that might just come down to who's got the ball last. Our ranker is going with Grundy Center 21-20. Expect that one to be really, really close, although the records and then the rankings by their name might not show it. Now, moving on to our 1 o'clock game Friday, Underwood, MFL Marmac, a top 5 matchup. You got number 1 Underwood, who's 10-1, versus number 5 MFL Marmac, who's also 10-1. Both teams with 1 loss. Underwood's way back to Van Meter in Week 1, and MFL's was to Sumner Fredericksburg, I want to say in Week 3 or 4. It was pretty early in the year. Underwood boasts a little bit more of a versatile offense, but the Bulldogs can also beat you in more ways than one. Now, MFL Marmac's draw was not pretty. They've had to go through West Branch and Regina to get here. Both really impressive victories. Carver Blitz Bienchen will be the man under center. I'm sorry if I'm not saying that correctly. He'll be handing it off to 2 800-plus yard rushers and Wyatt Powell and Quinn McGill. Blitz Banton will also rely on his legs a decent amount as well. Now, the story for the Bulldogs is their defense, who has not allowed double-digit points to an opponent in 5 weeks. Something tells me, though, that streak might snap this week because they're facing off with Underwood, who's got top statistical guys in every single category. It feels like kind of like the Sailors in Columbus Catholic. Garrett Louette, Maddox Nelson, and Mason Boothby are all top 3 in their respective categories, and each of them have 15-plus touchdowns to their name. Sophomore quarterback Garrett Louette, that is, the running back Maddox Nelson, and wide receiver Mason Boothby. And Boothby is actually the leading 1A receiver, again, in Class 1A. The Underwood defense has been just as elite as the offense, though, led by Graham Jensen, 64 tackles and 17 for loss. Be ready for some fireworks. I kind of see this one as a really high-scoring game, our ranker says right here. The defenses statistically have been elite, but I think each of these offenses are just that much better. Get ready for a track meet in this one. He's got Underwood moving on to the state championship game, 35-27. That would set up an Underwood-Grundy Center matchup, one that we've kind of expected all year. So a little bit of chalk here, but in the dome, you get these teams in a controlled environment. That just it's huge for those passing attack teams, and Underwood definitely relies on that a lot more with Louette. Moving on to the nightcap on Friday, 5A. This is going to be a ton of fun, ton of marquee matchups. Let me pull up our 5A semifinal right here. You're going to start off with Southeast Polk and Valley, this one around 4 o'clock. Number 14 Valley, they're just inevitable, it feels like, at this point. And, we talked about double-digit seeds making it to the Dome. Well, you got two of them in Class 5A in Valley and Ankeny Centennial. But starting with the first one, like I said, number 14 Valley at 6-5 at number 1 Southeast Polk, who's 11-0. Rematch from week 1 of the regular season that Southeast Polk won by a score of 24-18. Valley was in the ball game late, but ultimately could not get a stop with 4 minutes left to get the ball back. Also a rematch from last season's state championship game that Southeast Polk won in convincing fashion, 49-14. That was kind of the Abu Sama game. If you guys remember that, I know I was there. That was just incredible. But nevertheless, Valley knocked off Dowling, who was number 1 in the RPI in the semis last season. We'll see if they can do it again. They're coming off a really good win against a good Hawkeye team on the road. Jaden McGregory was the huge factor in that one. He caught a touchdown. He blocked a field goal, ran it all the way back for a touchdown. If he can be a huge factor, that could change the game dramatically. But in the end, our ranker is going with the number 1 team, Southeast Polk, to win this one, 27-14. Just too many weapons, it feels like, for the Southeast Polk team of Destiny, who I will say was given a really, really big scare. It could easily be Cedar Falls at this point. Cedar Falls went for 2, down 1 in that regular season game. I think Southeast Polk's going to come out, just with their hair on fire in this one, knowing that, they survived a really, really big scare, and our ranker agrees with me. He thinks Southeast Polk's going to come out and win this one. He's got them 27-14. Moving on to your nightcap, and this might be the biggest game at the Unidome this week. Ankeny Centennial and Ankeny. This is number 13 versus number 7, 7-4 versus 8-3, and another rematch from week 1 of the regular season. I was there. Ankeny won this matchup in OT, 39-38, a dramatic comeback. It was 17-0, I think, in the first quarter, 21-0. It was just something crazy. Ankeny clawed back, found a way to win this game, and Centennial, that put a sour taste in their mouth. They're going to be looking for some revenge after blowing that 17-0 lead in the first quarter. These two have met one other time in the playoffs. In 2016, Centennial won in round 1, 34-24. Both these teams are playing really, really good football right now. Ankeny, you could say, had the biggest win of all teams across the state last week against Dowling. Really in a massive win in a physical game. That was really impressive. I don't think many were expecting that. The inter-city rivalry, though, gets its first semifinal matchup since the split 10 years ago. This is going to be a fun one. I wonder if the Dome's going to have enough people to hold it. It's going to be loud. It's going to be jumping. It's going to be a ton of fun. But in the end, I know a lot of people are watching and I'm waiting for this. Our ranker does have Ankeny Centennial getting revenge, winning this one. He's got them 31-17. They've been playing really good ball, coming off a great win against Bettendorf on the road. And our ranker in the end, he's just going with a team to get revenge against a team that suffered a tough loss to earlier in the year, and so he's going with the Jaguars to win this one, 31-17, make it a Southeast Polk Ankeny Centennial state championship game, a rematch that happened in the regular season this year, and a really, really good game. Moving on, though, you can't talk about 5A forever. This is on Saturday. Yes, we got Saturday football all day at the Unidome, and we are starting with 2A, Monticello and Van Meter. This is going to be fun. For the entire season, the Van Meter Bulldogs, led by quarterback Austin Baumhover, he's got 1,300 yards passing and 25 touchdowns, and running back Ben Gordon. Ben Gordon might be the best running back in Class 2A, still left on the board, 1,800 yards rushing and 25 touchdowns. I will say, shout out to PCM's Adrian Robbins. He had a monster year. I think he eclipsed 2,000 yards pretty easily. So no slouch to him. They put up a heck of a fight against Van Meter. But moving on, though, Van Meter has really have set the number 2 spot in the rankings, have not let go. They have won all 11 of their games, scoring 50-plus points in 7 of those games. The Monticello Panthers have sat right behind them in number 3 for the majority of the year. The Panthers are led by one of the best Class 2A has ever seen. Preston Rise has 2,200 yards passing and 23 touchdowns, along with 1,800 rushing yards and 31 touchdowns. Again, he set that record. He broke the record that Hunter Decker's had for the most passing rushing yards. So shout out to him. And when 2 of these power teams meet up in the Dome on Saturday morning, we are going to see some very high-level football in a game which I see a lot of points being scored, says our ranker. Preston Rise is going to put on an absolute show for those in attendance and watching online. But at the end of the day, he's going with Van Meter. They're going to find a way to get it done. He thinks Van Meter is going to be playing for its 2nd straight state title. And again, he's got Van Meter beating Monticello. That's a really, really tough draw for Monticello and Van Meter. And it's just going to be an instant classic, one of those games that you wanted to see at the Dome all season long. And we're getting that Saturday morning, bright and early at 10 a.m., I believe. Moving on to our second semifinal game in Class 2A, Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, and Spirit Lake. Spirit Lake won a thriller in the quarterfinals. I don't know if you guys saw that. We posted their game-winning touchdown, Caden Lunt to Steckley, Ethan Steckley. That was an electric call. I had a ton of fun watching that one on stream. If there was ever a time for my playoff prediction streak to end, our ranker says it glad it came in one of the most exciting high school football games he's ever seen. Spirit Lake defeated West Lyon in an absolute classic. I just talked about that. Caden Lunt hit Ethan Stecker on an 85-yard touchdown in the final seconds of the game to give the Indians the lead, and they were able to hold off a last-second field goal attempt by West Lyon to earn the right to celebrate a home win and a semifinals berth. Now, on the other side, Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, the game that was a lot closer than the score shows. The Knights were able to tie this one in the second half, but quickly gave up 21 unanswered points to the Lions to put this one out of reach. The Lions had one of the most impressive rushing games you will see in any class this point this season. Co-stars Reese Vanderzee and Graham Even rushed for 218 yards and 243 yards and 7 combined touchdowns. Much like Kemper, Spirit Lake has the passing attack to keep this one close into the second half. But at the end, it's just Vanderzee and Eben are just going to wear down this defense and make plays when they matter most. They run this read option, really, really tough to stop. Both of them are Division I commits going to the Iowa as of right now. Van Meter, Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, title game. It feels like it's been inevitable at this point, and our ranker does not see it changing. He's got Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, and Van Meter squaring off in what might be the best state championship game amongst all classes if it were to line up like this. Now, moving on to our final class. I've done a ton of talking. I'm glad you guys have stuck around. Class 3A. Now, we're ending on an absolute great note. These are 2 incredible games to end this one. Starting with Crescent and Heelan, a very impressive win over Webster City. A very impressive win for Webster City over Nevada, but they fell to the number 1 team in the second round. I tell you what, Webster City got up 19-0 over Crescent pretty quick. I saw that score on Twitter, and I was shocked. Crescent went on and scored like 50-6 unanswered points or something just crazy. And Crescent played really, really well in that one. And they're just led by Kale Turner, Brendan Hayes. You know the stars. They're going to show out on this turf. But you got a team in Heelan who just avenged their one loss of the season into center. Quinn Olson is kind of the do-it-all man for them. He's their quarterback. He's also one of their leading rushers. He's a star. He's a name to look out for, number 5 for Bishop Heelan. But in the end, our ranker is going with the lone undefeated team remaining in Class 3A. He's going with Crescent to punch their ticket to the state title in that 4 o'clock window in Class 3A. Ending our semifinal round across all classes, though, is Williamsburg and Solon. These 2 teams matched up. I was there. We've got a recap out on YouTube. Head on IE Sports YouTube where you're watching this video right now. You'll have to scroll down a little bit, but there is a recap between these 2 teams in week 7 or 8. It was one of the last weeks, and it was a really, really good game. And Williamsburg, like I said, getting into this game, coming off a massive win over Mount Vernon in a game that was probably a dome caliber game. At that point, Solon, they also survived a pretty good scare to West Delaware. And many people did not think West Delaware had a chance. But sure enough, they beat Assumption, and then they go on the road and almost beat Spartans. But, Solon's led by Tyler Bell at quarterback, Brett White, Conlon Poyton's a sophomore running back. He's a stud. Williamsburg, you're going to have Derek Weisskopf at the helm. He's a star. You got to look out for him. Braylon Wetjim and Steckley. Steckley's a receiver. I've had a ton of fun filming him. It kind of feels like he's taken over as their top target. I believe he's number 18. He's a ton of fun to watch. And again, that game I watched in Solon was just an incredibly physical game. It came down to the wire. I expect this one to come down to the wire too. But in the end, our ranker is going with another team to get their revenge in Williamsburg. He's going with Williamsburg to beat Solon, avenge of a loss from earlier in the season, and go back to the state title for the second straight year in a different class. That would set up a Williamsburg-Creston state championship matchup in Class 3A. That one would be a ton of fun. No matter what happens in these semifinal games, all of these state championship games are going to be a ton of fun. But that was it. That was 30 minutes of me talking about every single class. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to drop your picks in the comments. Let me know what you think. And again, this is Cadence and signing out. I will see you guys at the Dome all week this week.